with demand expected to come back, the question remains, does this mean the economy is back on track?
Companies now, after experimenting with offshore in places like India, Philippines, and Poland, want to bring those jobs back.
We invest in the U.S. We're the biggest exporter in the country. In the cycle we're in right now, we're creating jobs.
From Radio America, it's Neil Asbury's Made in America, the show that explores American industry, large and small, and promotes American-made products everywhere. Put Neil Asbury's Made in America to work for you.
A very big welcome to you today. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Ruffman. So, Rich, we've got a great show today, some really, really wonderful guests. We're going to talk a lot about what's going on with our economy, how do we get our people back to work, the small businesses and the vital role that they play in getting our people back to work. What do we got to do? Do we need more government stimulus, or do we just got to get our entrepreneurs and our inventors and our risk takers back in the game? Because that is the ultimate stimulus of getting our small businesses working again. And I know a lot of states out there they're trying very hard. And some governors are having a big success getting their people back to work. Other governors are saying, shut her down. We don't see, this getting back to where we can even enter phase one until sometime in June. You're even hearing into July, some cases. So our country is really being torn apart about what it means to go back to work.
Yeah, it is. It's very disparaging, to be perfectly honest, because, I love what everyone's saying. This is the mantra. We're all in this together. We're all in this together. That's great. Well, let me tell you something. If we're all in this together, I can't help you. I can't do anything if I can't be functioning with my company, if I can't be creating, if I can't be manufacturing, if I can't be producing and helping my own people and having them help other people, then I can't be part of this whole landscape of we're all in this together. So you've got to get back to work. I mean, the alternative is what? Everyone's going to be on the dole for the next 60, 90 days, or maybe 100 days, or maybe, I don't know, forever?
Forever.
Yeah.
I mean, and some people,
that doesn't work.
And some people would actually be fine with that, which is the scary thing. And here it is, jobless claims topped 36 million since this whole thing began about 6 weeks ago.
It's going to go up some more. With
nearly 3 million this week added, to that. We just can't go on. I mean, it's just not sustainable. It's just not sustainable. What are you going to do? You're just going to keep printing currency, and you're going to devalue everybody's savings and everything that we've worked for, and our currency is going to be like the rupiah? Is that what we're heading towards here?
Well, the good news is that states are opening up. The states are relaxing some of these lockdown. About 11 states this week have indicated that they're doing it, Florida being one of them. This state opened up north of Palm Beach County, and then starting south of Palm Beach County is going to be Monday the 18th. It was announced this morning by the county mayor in Miami-Dade that Dade County is opening up on Monday. Broward County is opening up on Monday. Palm Beach County is already opened. It opened up this Monday. So, we're really cooking right now. We're trying to go in the right direction. I think there's a lot of pent-up excitement and energy waiting to see that happen.
Well, Rich, we got an incredible first guest, and he's just published a piece in Fox Business News, together with a good friend of ours. They co-wrote this piece, Alfredo Ortiz from the Job Creators Network. He's been with us a number of times. We've had some really fascinating discussions with him. And I'm talking about the former governor of Kansas, Jeff Colyer, who happens to also be a medical doctor. He just came from the hospital, actually, to join us. And he and Alfredo published a piece, Reopen America Smartly. Let small businesses jumpstart the economy. I mean, there it is in a headline. I mean, that's it. That's the wisdom. That's what we got to do. Governor, welcome to Made in America.
Oh, man, what a great show. Really appreciate the chance to be with you today.
You too. And, I know you've been an entrepreneur. You're one of us. And, you're a governor. You're out there. You're trying to make your state better. You're a writer, you're publishing, you're doing all kinds of things to try to move this country forward. And you recognize the most vital role that small businesses provide to our country and getting it back working again. So can you elaborate a little bit on the piece that you just published about how small businesses can jumpstart the economy?
Sure. Small businesses, that's the real key, the real core to the United States economy. That's, every man's business, and it's where most people are employed, and it's the real driver of America. And, we've flattened the coronavirus curve, and it's been a great cost, to liberty and to the economy. But now we're much smarter than we were 2 months ago or 3 months ago. Many small businesses, they understand what is needed, what their customers need, and they want to protect them. And so what we were talking about is if you use testing, but do it strategically. You do strategic testing and tracings, and then let small businesses innovate. You can isolate the few to protect the many instead of isolating the many to protect the few. And that's what this is about, is how to start dealing with a COVID world in which small businesses can do their very best.
Well, what is interesting, doctor and governor, because you're going to come from two different vectors. And by the way, we could do telemedicine later. I thought I'd have a conversation with you. Yeah. All right, just kidding. But
we'll take a look at you. Sure.
Well, here I'm going to hold my side up to the microphone. Take a look.
Okay. Yeah.
So there you go. But here's the thing I find amazing. America is an amazing country. Americans are amazing people. You come from the heartland of America. By the way, I spent many months, 7-8 months straight, 1 year in Kansas City, and working with the doctor another doctor who owned Casey Masterpiece, and I did some national global marketing for them. The only time I ever gained a lot of weight in my life was being in Kansas City. Just have to tell you that. I never ate so well in my life. But America is amazing. We ask Americans to sacrifice. We ask Americans to take the risk, to shut down, to voluntarily walk away from their livelihood for the betterment of all. And guess what? Americans did that. That's what we do. That's what we did in World War II. We all sacrificed while our men went off to war. My dad and his generation went to war. The mother stayed here. Those who didn't go stayed here. We gave up rubber. We gave up sugar. We gave up cars. We gave up everything so we can win the war because we believed in the greater good for everybody. We're going to do that. Americans know how to do that. So when someone says, well, we can't open up because it's too risky, Americans understand that risk, but you know something? They are willing to take a mitigated risk. They're willing to understand what they have to do. And, Governor, I know the people of Kansas know what they have to do. And you know what? They're willing to do it. Give them a shot to get back to work.
People do want to work, and they want to solve the problem. Everybody sees what's going on out there. And there are just really great innovations. I was just talking to the CEO of a company in Wichita that makes airplane parts. And you know what? What they're doing is they're actually now starting to produce some PPE. But part of it is it's not charity. It is we need that supply chain here in America. So you solve the short-term problem, and you make sure in the long term you don't have these problems again. And so, they're using their own innovation, and it's putting people to work, and it's helping us solve these problems. We can trace and test, and there are lots of businesses that are doing that, and a couple of really great small businesses that are even making vaccines.
So, Governor, around our country right now, you're seeing this play out, and you look at Michigan, you look at Wisconsin, you look at Kansas. Democrat governors and Republican legislators. And, they're really at odds, and it really shows the sort of divide that's in our country, right? I mean, it's amazing to watch this play out. And you're seeing that even play out in Kansas right now about how long should this stay at home be in place. And, the governor of Laura Kelly of Kansas right now says, hey, look, we got to extend this thing into June. It's got to go further. And you got the Republican House and the Senate is saying we got to get people back to work. I mean, this political divide, it's even COVID-19 is not free from American politics, is it?
No, and that's so unfortunate that people are letting politics enter into the science and using the science for political ends is something that's just got to stop. What Americans expect is that, their leaders, use the best science, use their best judgment, and they bring everybody together for solutions. And I think there are a lot of people that want to do that. I mean, many of us, we just want to offer solutions and deal with the problem. And that's what we're doing. And there are other people that see this as a way of gaining power or, the ultimate planned economy. Remember what the Soviet Union was about. It was about a planned economy. America's not a planned economy, and we're not going to plan our way out of a COVID virus attack.
Really quickly, we got like 30 seconds. What do you think, Governor, about more stimulus? And we can carry that on, to the next segment. But does the American economy need more stimulus? Or do we have to unshackle the entrepreneur and let them do their thing? Or do we need to do both?
Well, the first thing is we've got to let entrepreneurs, got to let business people do their job. And that's going to tell you, hey, do we need to touch up something here or there? That's fine in doing this. But keeping everybody at home, you can't stimulate the economy if nobody's working. You've got to have businesses up and running so that they can go and take the ball and start running with it. They're always going to do better than just a government program. Entrepreneurs, they look at who their customers are. They want to protect them. They want to see new business opportunities. They want to get people employed. They see this, and that's the first place we should start.
Hey, Governor, we got to take a quick break. We're on with former governor from Kansas, the great state of Kansas, Jeff Colyer, and we're talking about how do we restart this economy. We got 36 million people right now out of work, and they're suffering. We got to do something about it. Stay with us.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Ruffin, and we are together with Governor Jeff Colyer from Kansas. Governor, how do you see this recovery coming about? And as an entrepreneur and a small business owner, I'm an appliance manufacturer. I have here in the United States, I have 350 employees. I have 3 different manufacturing facilities. And I got to tell you, we were budgeting to be at 50% of our budgeted sales for 2020 in April, 50% in May, and hopefully 60% in June. We actually came in at 75% for April, and we're tracking close to 90% for May, which is, quite unbelievable. Now, the mix of the business has changed, and a lot of our business is really coming from online portals and in e-commerce, and the nature of our business is radically shifting. It's amazing, and it's not happening over a period of a year. It's happening in a period of days. The whole nature of how we conduct business is changing. But what would you say to the entrepreneur out there that's looking at this economy and considering what kind of recovery are we going to have? What do you predict, for the summer? I mean, are we going to be at a point to where, we're going to be back and doing business in this, the president talks about a V-shaped recovery. Do you think we're going to rebound that quick? And what would it look like when we do rebound?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of things, that are happening here. And one of the things is we have changed phenomenally over the last couple of months, and we're not going back on a lot of them. Let me give you a personal example, which is at this point, I'm a surgeon, but in most of my follow-up appointments and things, I'm actually doing those by telemedicine. Well, that's great for the patient because they don't have to come into the doctor's office, drive there, wait in the lobby if he's late, all of that. We can do this over the phone, visually, and do it in the comfort of their home or if they're at work. Those sorts of things are changing, and those are transformative. And there's this incredible opportunity for entrepreneurs here in the United States. And part of that is, as we're going forward here, look at where our supply chains have come from. all of these supply chains that come from China, India, and other countries, we've just learned the major lesson that security belongs here. And those opportunities, if we take those opportunities up, we have a tremendous chance to move things, solidly forward. I do think that we have a very serious problem facing us, high unemployment, and if we're going to deal with it, we've got to make sure that businesses are moving rather than standing still.
So let me follow up on this for a minute from the doctor's point of view. This week, Rand Paul was at the hearing in the Senate with Dr. Tony Fauci, who seems to be the virus czar. I mean, that's if you listen to Tucker on Fox, he's been going after him a lot, and I you know what, I tend to agree with him. And Rand Paul saying, listen, let's be clear about something, that you're not the end all, be all when it comes to making decisions and advising on that to the president. I don't agree with what you're saying. I respect you for what you do, but I don't necessarily agree with what you're doing. And when we look at this, they're saying, well, schools. He said this the other day. Tony did. Dr. Fauci. He said that I don't see how schools can open up in the fall. I'm not so sure about that. It's not going to be 100% safe. Well, from a doctor's point of view, life's not 100% safe, is it? There are certain mitigated risks that you take in life: getting up, getting in your car, going on the highway, driving to a Jayhawk game, for example. But up there. But it's very busy. But I don't remember growing up in America where every day was 100% safe for me, even as a child when polio was going around back in the 50s. It just wasn't. You stayed away from water. You stayed away from everything because they don't know what it was. But you went on with your life. How do you feel as a doctor looking at this? And do you kind of agree with Rand Paul, or are you in a different wheelhouse? As you're never going to be 100% safe, and we really got to get back to life. What do you think?
So I've been both a governor and a doctor. I've worked in disasters around the world in 25 different war zones. I've worked in epidemics and a lot of different things. And I understand the perspective that you have from the medical side, which is, yes, we want to preserve all life. And frankly, every governor wants to do that too. But it's the governor's decision. It's the president's decision on where we go. They're the ones that need to take responsibility. And I think ultimately later on this year and next year, you're going to see people deciding, did this person make the right decision or not? And as a president or as a governor, you're accountable to people. And you're the one person where all of that information comes in. And you have to weigh things and listen to people to get to make those right decisions. So I think the right decision is made there. And what they're going to look at is, what's happening in New York is not what's happening in Elk County, Kansas. It is an entirely different situation. And what people can do is, let's look at this. The great strength of America is that we're not one size fits all. The great strength is we're diverse. We have different strengths in different places. And so that's how you can open up. That's how you can run the economy. And that's how you can deal with the virus. In dealing with this virus, we are learning more and more ways to self-isolate, that we can have the same effect as if we are all sitting home if we would go and test thousands of people every week, sort of like you do a political poll, and you can see what's going on, what people are thinking and talking about. And if you see a problem in Western Texas, then you can test some more there. And then what you do is you focus on things. A much more surgical approach to this is what we need. And it's a common sense approach. And then that governor and the president and the community can make the right choice, the right balance. And what may be right in Wichita, Kansas, may be different in Western Kansas or wherever it is in America you are.
Governor, I mean, that's well said. I mean, very well said. I mean, very, very straight to the point, and it makes perfect sense. I just wish all of us could come together under that umbrella of that wisdom and that logic that you just presented to our listeners. Governor, unfortunately, we're out of time. Governor Jeff Colyer from the great state of Kansas, we really, really appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, God bless you. You have great listeners. Love the show. Thanks. It's a great honor to be with you.
Thank you, sir. Coming up, we have Danielle DiMartino Booth. She's the CEO and the chief strategist at Quill Intelligence. Still a lot more to talk about for your jobs.
Made in America.
Sharply higher at the open, stocks continued to perform well over the course of the day Tuesday.
And I think that bodes well here over the next couple of years for having bigger demands coming to this country.
Now, more of Neil Asbury's Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Ruffman. Hey, Rich, we got a great guest joining us. And first, it was really wonderful to spend time with Governor Colyer from Kansas and talking about how small businesses need to be unleashed. And that's the greatest stimulus that we could ever have in our country, is getting our entrepreneurs and our small businesses back to work and allowing them to bring their employees back to work. And then the economic benefit that would unleash would be amazing. But then there's the other side of it, is what should the government be doing? And this past week, the Fed Chairman, Jerome Powell, said that, hey, the government is going to likely need to have some more measures to pull our economy out of these doldrums that it's in right now. But he didn't specify what exactly that should be or what that would be. Now, we just unleashed trillions of dollars, into our economy through all kinds of stimulus, including the PPP program that really helped our small businesses, but a lot. I mean, bailouts for large industries and the sending money to our citizens to help them get through this difficult time, unemployment benefits and so forth. So, the government has done a lot, but what more should they be doing? Well, the Fed Chairman Powell seems to think that maybe more is needed. Well, we're very pleased to have with us Danielle DiMartino Booth, who is the CEO and chief strategist for Quill Intelligence, and she also spent 9 years at the Federal Reserve Bank in Dallas. Danielle, welcome to Made in America.
It's great to be here today.
So, you spent a lot of time at the Federal Reserve, and I'm sure that you're a watcher and a reader of the tea leaves about what's going on. How do you think Powell is doing? And is he right that the Congress is going to need to consider some more stimulus?
I do think that Congress needs to contemplate more stimulus. My caveat would be that each round of stimulus seems to get further and further away from the people who need to be on the receiving end of it, which are the small businesses.
Yeah, I think this is Dr. Rich Ruffman. I agree with what you're saying. It seems like it went far afield in the first two, and certain people who should have received it and really need it. And that's a small business of the United States.
But and in Richard, there's also a lot of fraud. Let's not forget fraud.
No, well,
and in fact, the government is already prosecuting people who fraud. And then there's the whole thing about the PPP program was supposed to go to the small businesses, ended up going to big businesses. And they have to now start returning it, or they're getting a black eye in the social media. Right? They're being shamed. Why did you take that money?
And it's been somewhat convoluted. I think there are, personally at Quill Intelligence, all of my employees are 1099 contract workers. I doubt I'm alone. So it excludes some types of small businesses, some businesses in high rent urban areas. Their overhead is more than what their payroll is. So they said, why am I going to take a loan where I have to have 75% apply to payroll when that's not my main expense? And even for companies that have reopened, such as here in Texas, you have restrictions on how many employees you can have in a given place, given social distancing regulations. And so my point is, it was very convoluted. It was not very well thought through, and the next rounds of stimulus aren't taking care of it.
Well, yes, but I will say this in defense of the folks who are doing it. In a very, very short period of time, look at the number of, first of all, look at the system they created, and then look at the number of loans and the applications that went through that system to be processed. That was pretty quick. So I agree. I was a little disappointed when I saw how the money was being handled. I mean, I was stunned that they were changing the rules up until that Friday evening and going into that weekend for the first weekend when they opened it up. And that wasn't completely clear yet to a lot of people. So that's the downside of all this. The good side is that we actually tried to do. We did it. We did something, and I certainly think we helped a lot of people along the way.
So Danielle, following up on Rich's point, that Mnuchin, his thing was, it wasn't quite that way because he said, you just walk into the bank, bring your payroll, and you walk out with the money. Well, it didn't quite work that way.
Didn't happen.
But the whole thing was, this was a desperate situation, and we needed to get the money out there quick. And they did do that, I must say. They put $350 billion out in about a week. I mean, that's amazing that they were able to process that amount of money to that many people. Number. Would you agree?
Look, I think that what small banks in America accomplished very quickly was some of the finest banking that we've seen in U.S. history. And I think the credit needs to go where it's deserved because a lot of the big banks initially were only accepting applications from their existing clients who'd already had loans with them in the past. But from everything I've heard in terms of the success stories, it has been your typical community banker that you think about, with that great Christmas classic movie. And they're the ones I think who are really some of the heroes in keeping a lot of our small businesses up and running. The vast majority of the loans, the vast majority of the loans were for $150,000 or less. And that's truly what we would consider to be a mom and pop endeavor.
So you make a good point.
It's a very good point.
Small businesses.
Yeah.
I mean, not small business, community banks. Rich, I mean, we've advocated for community banks and
big supporters.
Dodd-Frank and all the regulation and everything. They were essentially strangled by Dodd-Frank. And if it wasn't for the community banks, that money would not have been put to work, or it would not be in the hands of the people that needed it, as what Danielle has just said.
Yeah, no, and it's what breaks my heart if you bring up Dodd-Frank for just a very quick non sequitur is that I think that they're going to be some of the most harmed because throughout a good portion of the cycle until just about over a year ago that the Fed released them from the strictures and the onerous compliance regulations that for Dodd-Frank for the stress testing, they made a lot of loans that they should not have made. So, I mean, there's the sad irony is I think a lot of the small and mid-sized banks are going to suffer because they made loans early on that they shouldn't have so that they could make up for the onerous compliance costs that they had to take on in order to comply with Dodd-Frank.
But you know what I find interesting, Danielle? The how fast the Feds reacted to this scenario. I mean, I was stunned how fast Powell jumped in immediately. And it seemed like he was taking control of the situation. It made it perfectly clear that the Fed was going to do everything it could, use every tool it could, every tool in the workbench to make something happen to stabilize the market. And I was seriously, I was very stunned how fast he made it come about and how creative he was at the time.
Well, they certainly had the playbook handy. They just had to dust it off, and that didn't take any time at all. The majority of the facilities that were opened up had already been shut down in the aftermath of the financial crisis when liquidity wasn't the main hindrance for the markets. In my view, though, I think they went one step too far in stabilizing the markets because they opened the door to come in and bail out junk-rated companies, and that's certainly not something I think should be the place of the central bank.
Danielle, I know that you're on a time crunch. Do you have just a couple of minutes more, or do you need to run? Because we need to take a quick break.
Sure. I've got a few more minutes, yes.
Okay, good. We're on with Danielle DiMartino Booth, CEO and Chief Strategist for Quill Intelligence. Also spent 9 years at the Federal Reserve Bank in Dallas. Still a lot more to talk about. Stay with us.
made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman, and we are together with Danielle DiMartino Booth, Chief Strategist and CEO for Quill Intelligence, and she was also several years with the Federal Reserve Bank in Dallas. So, Danielle, what do you think about these interest rates? I mean, there is no interest. So that's the interest today. There is no interest.
But they're not going to go negative. Yeah. They made that clear. Yeah, we are not going negative.
We're not going to be Japan here, are we, where we got negative interest rates?
No, we're not. And, I was kind of heartened by the fact that, normally when it comes to Fed speak and other Fed officials, it's kind of like herding cats. Really is. They're all going off in a different direction with their communications and their messaging. And yet, leading up to Chair Powell's Wednesday speech, they were all pretty much in line, and they had a cohesive front saying, we're not going there. And then on Wednesday, he delivered that forcibly, saying, we are not going to be imposing negative interest rates. It won't work. Banks are designed to be intermediating functions, and you would slay bank profitability, which is exactly what's happened in Europe and in Japan, by the way. And it's not going to happen here. So that's the one thing that I can say that I'm extremely pleased that the Fed has done, and that is holding the line on negative interest rates. And maybe it's contagious in a good way, because the Bank of England came out 24 hours later and echoed what Powell had to say and said, you know what, not for England either.
Well, not only that, Mr. Powell came out and made it very clear. He must be very concerned, because he's very vocal in the last, few weeks. And he made the comment that, listen, if we do not, the longer we go in this situation, the longer we do not get this more under control, the worst and long-term effects we're going to have in the American economy, which will then affect the global economy. So, there's a deep concern there.
Yes, there absolutely is. And I have to worry that some of the things that the Fed is getting involved in and, growing their balance sheet at an exponential pace, that it's going to be difficult to extricate themselves the same way that quantitative tightening was not practicable when they tried it. So, yes, extremely troublesome. So at least we didn't do negative interest rates, but what's going to happen the first time the market, how will the market react if the Fed says, well, we're not going to be buying junk bond ETFs anymore? Will there be a backlash to that?
So what happens with interest rates? Can they stay this low, and for how long can they?
Well, I would say for the foreseeable future, and I think that is something that the Fed has tried to communicate with absolutely no gray area about it. I think that the Fed if we were lower for longest leading up to this, I venture to say we'll go lower for even longer than any of us can imagine. The one caveat that I would throw out there is, be careful if we end up with inflation, if we continue to just keep the printing press running 24/7 and interest rates at the zero bound are not a luxury. But
Danielle, we've heard about that a lot, though. With the low interest rates in the past and quantitative easing and printing money and keeping the printing press going, and that inflation is coming, and they've been saying that for years and years and years. And I understand why they say that, but it's never happened.
Well, it hasn't. But I dare say that as we cruise towards $30 trillion of debt, if politicians get it in their head that the numbers truly no longer matter, and that the sky is the limit, such that we can go from 30 to 60 trillion and impose universal basic income and health care for everybody, and everybody gets a pony, that becomes
no, that's Bernie. He's out. They're not getting ponies anymore, and the puppies are gone too. Everyone doesn't get a puppy anymore. That's out.
They're both gone. The flip side of that is it's a bipartisan effort to print as much money as possible right now.
Well, but look at what's going to happen, towards the end of this week. We've got the vote in the House for this $3 trillion wish list. I mean, that's a pretty scary wish list.
Yes, it is. And again, that money is not earmarked for small businesses. And I take issue with that. I take issue with the fact that they're trying to have a backdoor bailout of a lot of states whose fiscal problems have been a long time in the works, not something that popped up just because of COVID-19. So these are the things that you have to worry about as a taxpayer, that in the auspices of trying to put out a fire for a crisis, you end up passing legislation that would have never been passed otherwise.
Danielle, you've been an incredible guest, a very, very clear voice on these very important topics, very difficult topics. You've explained them very well. Danielle DiMartino Booth, CEO at Quill Intelligence, and she's also formerly with the Federal Reserve Bank in Dallas. Danielle, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Be safe.
Thank you. Coming up, Dr. Rothman and I have some final thoughts for the day.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. Rich, fascinating discussion with Danielle and about the Fed and what's going on there. And the printing presses are working overtime, just printing money right now. We're going to be looking at a $30 trillion federal debt. I mean, when George W. Bush left office, it was close to $10 trillion. And then Obama in 8 years doubled it. And now we're up another $10 trillion. And that's pretty scary stuff. Another thing that came up on the show today, Governor Colyer from Kansas, another really wonderful guest, and he talked about we need to bring our supply chains back from China. And you hear that a lot, and everybody's talking about it. And oh my goodness, on the evening programming of Fox News, I mean, it's like, so many segments are, we got to bring our supply chains back. And it's kind of like you just kind of rip it out of China and or Asia or Europe for that matter, or India. Look, we don't only buy stuff from China. We buy stuff from everywhere. And if you look at the largest export market for just about any country is the United States, right? So, I mean, we're just buying stuff from everywhere. And I think it's aspirational to say we're going to bring, all of our manufacturing back and all of that. But is it practical? And my point is, for that to happen, American culture has to change. And it has to change because Americans vote with their pocketbook, right? Mm-hmm. That's why President Trump was cruising to re-election before COVID.
Sure. Everyone's doing great.
Everybody's doing great. Everybody's got a job. I mean, there was no way that Biden was going to break into that. Americans vote with their pocketbook. And that means what they buy, on a day-to-day basis. They vote with their pocketbook. They want the lowest price. They want the lowest price. They want the lowest price. We are a very, very competitive marketplace. And, I think that if, like in Japan, the Japanese, because of their patriotic duty, will pay 25, 30% more for a product because it's made in Japan. But Americans won't. And until that culture changes, it might sound nice on the evening cable news channels. A lot of people might be saying, yeah, that's what we got to do. But those same people, when they go to the store to buy something, they're looking at the price and they're not looking at where it's made.
But maybe we reach a tipping point. Maybe there's an inflection point right now where people are looking at it and they're saying, so what did I learn out of this whole pandemic scenario? Well, I learned that 70% of the chemicals that go into our pharmaceuticals come from out of this country. India being one of them, and China hugely being another one.
Germany, Switzerland?
Yeah, but I'm talking about the guys over in Asia and so forth. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it comes from there, and they may be saying, you know what, maybe there's something to it that we shouldn't be relying upon, particularly China, who doesn't really have our best wishes at their heart. They don't. They are very competitive they're very, very competitive with us, and they have a long-term plan to exceed what we're doing. So they say. So maybe there's a chance, there's that inflection point that you're talking about, that people are saying, I don't know, maybe it would be better if we got some of the stuff from produced in the United States. All right, another one. What about rare earth, rare metals? And I'm not talking about the rock band from the 70s. Rare metals, all right? And as we discussed with the governor of Alaska just a few weeks ago, and Alaska was about to start developing this whole rare earth, rare metal manufacturing business in Alaska. So maybe they're saying, all right, maybe we should bring some of that back. But you're right. It will cost more money, so you have to make that decision. And you're right, that goes right out of the pocket. Or let me ask you this, because you're a major manufacturer. Would it be possible for the United States government to bring some of these countries back, some of these manufacturers back into the United States to produce here with a caveat, with a carrot, to encourage them to do that, the way they did repatriation of monies coming from other parts of the world, i.e. Ireland, bringing the money back here? We gave breaks to them in terms of taxes. Is there a way, do you think, that the U.S. government could say, or at least Trump's administration could say, wait, we really want these guys to come back. What can we do to encourage them to do that so the U.S. citizen doesn't pay 100% or 120% of what they're paying right now, rather?
Well, then the whole next thing that's going to come up is corporate welfare, right? Oh, you're incentivizing people.
That's a legitimate statement.
Yeah.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Then people are going to get beat up because, there's all these handouts, And then the issue is, and this is a lot bigger issue too, is that, and we don't have time, unfortunately, to go into this right now, is do we have the workers? Do we have the skills? We talked last week with John Ratzenberger, the very famous actor, a very big proponent of Made in America. He's very much advocating on behalf of vocational training and people working with their hands and doing these sorts of jobs and getting trained for those sorts of things. But culturally in the United States, people look down on that. So a lot of kids don't want to go into that because, their parents, don't want their kids to do that. And, they're being led in different directions and they get liberal arts degrees and they have no jobs and they live at home.
So to do this, no. So this is a good point. And we should pick this up in the next couple of weeks. To do this, we have to have a mind change. We really have to have a mind change.
We're talking a cultural change here.
But maybe folks want to entertain that. It'd be very interesting to see where this goes. It may go nowhere because a lot of people, Americans forget very quickly.
They forget very quickly.
As soon as things are better, they go, "Oh, it's better."
Right.
I'm fine. I'm going back to Walmart getting my sneakers.
And what's the best price?
Exactly. Well, that's why they're going to go to Walmart.
Yeah. Well, Rich, really good show today. I really love the governor. I really love Danielle. Man, both very great voices. We're very blessed to have them on our show to share all these great thoughts with our listeners. But unfortunately, right now, we're out of time. But we're going to be back again next week for another adventure of Made in America, where we never stop fighting for your jobs.